video, we're going to go over some of the primary disclosures that you as a seller should be aware of as you're completing them, and it should give you a general overview of what to expect and a general summary of what they're about. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to start with is some of the primary ones, especially the ones that actually require you to fill some information out. So some of the other ones are not going to be as interactive. More or less, they're already disclosures that are drafted for you, but you as a seller need to sign. You're essentially going to be giving the disclosures, but we're going to start with the ones that actually require your input on the property. So first and foremost is the real estate transfer disclosure statement. Now, this is one of the statutory disclosures, meaning that it is required by law. Unless, of course, there's a few exemptions. If you've not lived in the property as your primary residence, or if you've not occupied the property, among other things, or if it's a trust sale, sometimes there are some exemptions that will exclude you from this. However, assuming that this is not one of those exemptions, let's go ahead and get started. So the real estate transfer disclosure is a disclosure that basically it gives notice to the buyer of any major issues or conditions of the property that they are aware. So if you've lived in the property, for example, and you have knowledge of significant defects or malfunctions in the roof, maybe you have roof leaks or even prior roof leaks, or plumbing issues or structural issues, etc., you need to disclose it. These are very important to fill out in their entirety. Even when it comes down to things such as checking if you have a range oven, a range stove or oven or dishwasher, or whether there's a sump pump or a septic tank versus a public sewer system in here. If you don't know something, it's okay to not check it right away, but you're going to need to make sure that you complete this in its entirety before submitting to the buyer. And the reason for that is there are actually several loopholes that were a buyer or a buyer's agent knowledgeable enough to do so, and they wanted to worm their way out of a contract well into the transaction. Sometimes there are ways of them getting out if there's even so much as a checkbox missed on here. So, of course, your agent should be going over this as well, making sure that they catch any mistakes that you might have missed. However, as the seller, it's your responsibility to make sure that this is completed to the absolute best of your knowledge. So please make sure you read every sentence, make sure you read it in its entirety, and if you have any questions, please let us know. We want to make sure that this is done correctly the first time, and it's nothing to be intimidated about. But just make sure that you're giving it your full proper attention, and we get it done right the first time. And it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of it's going to go through. It's pretty much just straightforward questions. Are you, the seller, aware of any of the following: substances, materials which may be an environmental hazard, such as but unlimited to asbestos, formaldehyde, radon gas, etc. Truth. The bottom line is, if something that they ask is something you know about, then answer yes. And if you don't know about it, then the answer is no. If you're not, room additions, structural modifications and whatnot made without necessary permits, the bottom line is this: if you have a question about, should I disclose this or should I disclose that, probably 99 times out of 100, the answer is going to be disclose it, because this is one of those important documents that, if something is misrepresented and for whatever reason something comes up down the line and the buyer finds out about something that was not disclosed, but there was a reasonable proof or evidence pointing to a strong possibility that you were aware of something that you did not disclose, and that became an issue for the buyer, then that could become a potential grounds for a lawsuit. So again, as long as you're just straightforward and truthful, there's really very little to be concerned about. So it's one of those disclosures that all you got to do is read it, answer the questions verbatim, and of course, if you have any questions, let us know. And of course, please make sure you print and sign your name at the bottom and date it. Make sure you get all the signatures and the seller's initials as well. That's very important. Alrighty, moving on to the next one, the seller property questionnaire. Now, this one kind of overlaps some of the things that you're going to see in the real estate transfer disclosure statement. But it is a different form too. And again, the point is, more than anything, it's making sure that you're covering everything that there is to disclose. So it kind of, like I said, it overlaps. So it might even ask you some of the questions that were sort of framed or asked in a different way on the real estate transfer disclosure statement, but it might ask it a different way here. And also it does address some new things. So again, just answer the questions straightforward to the best of your knowledge. So within the last 3 years, the definite of occupant on the property. This says 3 years. So if it was 4 years ago, it's not required to be disclosed. So you just pretty much read it as it's asked, fill it out to the best of your knowledge, and please, again, just like all the other disclosures, especially the real estate transfer disclosure statement, do not miss any check boxes, do not miss any answers. And if also on the TDSs, the transfer disclosure statement as well, if you do check yes to something, make sure you fill out the explanation down here. And again, the reason for that is if it is missing an explanation, it could be as simple as, have you done any modifications to the home in the last 12 months? And you check yes. And maybe you painted a wall in a bedroom wall, but you forget to say, oh, I painted the master bedroom wall. Well, then again, that could technically be conceived as an incomplete statutory disclosure. And again, that could lead to potential loopholes for buyers down the road. So again, we just want to make sure that everything is completed in its entirety. And again, any questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, just fill it out as it is asked. Now, one common thing we see on this, if this is that people mischeck, is if this is a pre-1978 property where any renovations, i.e. sanding, cutting, demolition of lead-based paint material is completed in compliance with the Environmental Protection Agency. First of all, if your property is not pre-1978, it's a 2000 build or whatever, I would, this is kind of it's a rather ambiguous question here because this is one of the ones that could be confusing. I would write NA right here, or maybe put yes for this and then put explanation B5 NA. Property was built in 2000 or whatever it is. Now, however, let's just say this is an old property. And again, to the best of your knowledge, if everything has been done in accordance with this Environmental Protection Agency paint renovation rule, which basically requires that proper abatement procedures are followed and certain areas are tarped off and lead paint is disposed of in a proper manner, if you've not done any renovations on the property, to the best of your knowledge, answer these yes or no. Okay, so the purpose of this is not to corner you into making false assumptions, not saying, well, I don't know, maybe at some point in time, somebody was doing some stuff here that wasn't done in this compliance with this. Hey, unless you have a reason to believe that, and again, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so if you want legal advice on this, of course, consult an attorney, but again, just answer to the best of your knowledge. So if you don't know, maybe put yes, and then to the best of my knowledge, yes. Anyway, whatever you check yes or yes to, please make sure you complete the explanation to complete the form. And if you have any questions, let us know. Next one, earthquake hazard reports. Now, the great thing about part of this, well, of course, now this is all actually applies to the property, the specific property. So you do need to complete this. However, some of the earthquake disclosure information is going to be covered on the natural hazard disclosure statement, which was next. And a lot of that's going to be done for you. However, this is actually pertinent to the property, your property. So you need to answer this to the best of your knowledge. Now, you obviously do have a don't know box here. And now I wouldn't use this as a cop-out for everything. But if there's something you truthfully do not know anything about, you don't guess. So put don't know. Otherwise, put yes, no, or doesn't apply. And there also is the homeowner's guide to earthquake safety that you can also take a look at, that we can provide you, which will also give you a bit more information on the definitions of some of these terms, such as cripple walls, etc. So if there's any questions about this, let us know. Otherwise, complete this to the best of your knowledge. And as always, make sure you sign and date. And also complete the information we're going to complete this information on top. So make sure you sign and date and complete this to the best of your knowledge. Now, the next one, natural hazard disclosure statement. Now, regarding the natural hazard disclosures, the good thing is you are not an expert in natural hazard history or records or anything like that. I mean, unless you are, but most likely you're not. And the purpose of this is this is actually going to be completed by a third party. So NHD reports, natural hazard disclosure reports, are actually completed by third parties that compile the data. They comply with all the regulations to make sure it's factual information up to the date of scientific data that they have. So if your property is listed sitting on a fault zone or a liquefaction zone or an earthquake fault zone or seismic hazard zone or potential flooding, you might even be in a dam inundation zone, blah, blah, blah. Any of this stuff is going to be covered in the NHD form provided by a third party. Now, your agent's going to be ordering that, so you don't have to worry about that, which is great. But just understand that this is still something you're technically liable for, but on the NHD, you're signing here that say third-party disclosures, or you're representing that you have read and understand the document. I'm sorry, you're actually going to be checking that the responsibility of this is transferred to a third party, but you still do need to sign it as a seller because you essentially are paying for that third-party disclosure information. But like I said, that's going to be provided by a reputable and regulated source. So that's going to cover your responsibility on that. Lead-based paint. Properties built prior to 1978 are going to require lead-based paint hazards disclosure. This is essentially just notifying buyers that there is a possibility and very high likelihood that their property does contain lead-based paint. Whether or not it's the most exterior coat or maybe it's been covered up many times, it's important that they know that because then there are specific renovation guidelines that they must follow if they're going to do any work on the property. So another important form. Now, here, again, if you have specific knowledge of lead-based paint, mention it. Otherwise, again, unless there's a specific reason you are led to believe that you have lead-based paint present on your property, use your best judgment in filling this out. Now, the agent visual inspection disclosure, this is not completed by you as the seller. If this is completed by your agent or one of your broker's agents, and this is essentially just the agent going through the property, making sure they are annotating anything physically, visually good, any issues with the property. So mostly physical, visual issues. So if there's a scratched cabinet or a crack in a tile, or if the driveway's cracked or stucco's cracking outside, or a broken window, or a door doesn't shut properly, or yada, yada, yada. Now, they're not a home inspector and they're not a licensed builder, so they are not liable for specific things such as making sure something's properly built. However, this is just their best visual inspection of the property, and you as a seller need to acknowledge that they completed this and then sign that as well. Local area disclosures for San Diego County. Now, not all counties and not all areas have local area disclosures, but if they do, such as San Diego County, chances are the local broker is going to, your agent's broker is going to require that these are disclosed. So again, another document that is already provided for you gives the buyers tons and tons of disclosures about lots of things, about lots of different areas of the county. Much of it probably will not even pertain to your property, but a lot of general disclosures about the property. Just again, something to be aware that of it going out, because it still is part of the buyer's disclosure packet. All right, and at the bottom, you still will have to sign that as well. And then the statewide buyer and seller advisory. Now, this is a 12-page document, and it covers a lot of general disclosures about buying and selling a property. So it's a disclosure to the buyer and the sellers, mostly the buyers, of course. But it says the buyer's rights and duties, and your rights and duties as a seller. You have to disclose material facts known to you. If I haven't defined this previously, material facts are a fact of that most people would reasonably consider to be a deciding factor in buying a property. And that's not the official definition, but more or less it's anything that were somebody to know of that fact, their decision to purchase may have been swayed one way or the other. So a scuff mark on a piece of baseboard is probably not a material fact. However, a major crack underneath the laminate flooring that you just put down in the slab, that is a material fact. It could mean major foundational issues. So the importance of material facts in all these disclosures, and especially the first two that we looked at, the transfer disclosure and the seller property questionnaire, it's very important to disclose those. Gives the buyer and seller advisories about inspections, accuracy of square footage, soil and geological conditions. A lot of this stuff this is all completed for you. It's just general disclosures, but as a seller, again, it's your responsibility to know what's in here and to at least review it, because at the bottom you are required to sign it. So that's the main package here. Now, if you have a property that is in an HOA, you will also be typically providing homeowner association documents. Now, these are going to be ordered by escrow. Your agent is going to handle that, and those are going to be independently provided by the HOA. But it also is another document that the buyer is going to receive on your behalf, so something important to keep in mind. As well as CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions about the property, which will be attached to typically the preliminary title report. And that could provide any local guidelines or regulations as far as the use of the property. So those aren't in here because those aren't things that you're going to have to sign specifically. These are the primary ones you have to look at as you're signing. There may be a few additional ones, but for the most part, these are the bulk of them. So if you have any questions about any of these, make sure you give us a call or shoot us an email, and we will make sure to answer it for you. All righty? Hope you're having a great day, and we look forward to talking to you soon.